Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Josh Grachevsky. I'm Global COO of MediaCom. It's my great pleasure to welcome you to the first of MediaCom's Bigger Picture Live events. And what better way to kick off than by talking about one of the biggest shifts in consumer behavior that we've ever seen, the rise of online retail. The fundamentals of marketing will always remain constant, but the levers that we pull to gain an advantage are changing. We've witnessed a huge consumer shift to digital retail channels, and the acceleration has seen 10 years of progress in 10 months alone last year. CPG manufacturers, for example, experienced 277% increase in retail sales by e-commerce in Q2 2020 alone. While there have been winners, many brands have left themselves with a big job to do in catching up to consumer demand. And many marketers are going to be asking themselves, is my brand set up to realize the potential of e-commerce? The vast majority of consumer brands are used to very traditional relationships where one distribution method is enough. But now a messy mix is upon us. Marketplaces, online retailers, and specialist distributors now all play a role. While for many, having a direct customer relationship through their own online sales channel seems the most complex route of all. Now, although the acceleration of e-commerce has been particularly rapid, these changes point to a bigger truth, that the business world we all operate in is changing faster and becoming more complex than ever before. And this is why these sessions are called Bigger Picture Sessions. And this is why MediaCom's vision is to help our clients see the bigger picture. To us, seeing the bigger picture means taking a step back and understanding the whole context in which a brand operates. Getting an overview of all the challenges, the shifts, and consumer behaviors before developing strategies to move a brand forward as the world changes around it. Events like this will help us to do that. So today, we're going to be talking to marketers and partners about the bigger picture in e-commerce and about how to unlock the growth. Our panel today includes a diverse mix of e-commerce leaders, and it's going to be moderated by another Josh Gallagher, who is the Global Head of Commerce Consulting in MediaCom's Blink Consulting division. Joining Josh, we're delighted to have leading minds from Bayer and the Coca-Cola Company, Victoria Noel and Angelina Di Stefano, as well as having a perspective from our WPP partner, Ruth Zora from Wunderman Thompson. Then after the panel, I'll be talking with arguably the biggest shop in the world, Google. And in my conversation with Google's global commerce lead, Akhil Padman, we're going to be discussing the role that media agencies can play, not only to use their scale for e-commerce best practice, but to help brands accelerate to e-commerce maturity. But for now, I'm going to hand over to Josh to set the scene for today with a look at some of the tipping points that show why, after a year of sweeping change, e-commerce is entering a new phase in its evolution. Over to you, Josh.
Thanks, Josh. For me, there's been a bit of conjecture about e-commerce and whether it will stay, and we get a lot of people talking about that. But for me, the conjecture on the persistence of e-commerce is surely over. The content and the convenience of shopping online is proving way too much of a lure for shoppers. I'm really excited about the panel and the panelists that Josh mentioned we're going to have on. But before we head into that panel, I want to share some of the numbers behind what I see as one of the biggest changes in our lifetime outside of the mobile phone and social, and discuss that now's time for advertising to fully embrace some of those new formats in the pursuit of e-commerce excellence. So as Josh said, there's been 10 years of progress in 10 months, and there really has been a lot of shopping tipping points that I'm starting to see. We're seeing and we're predicting over the next few years that 25% of all retail sales are going to be online. And that's huge. That's not just opening another store. That's not even just opening another country or another distribution method. It's almost another continent for brands. And that's a huge opportunity when we start to think about the shift in consumer behavior around buying. When they go online, one of the other big tipping points that I'm seeing, and I'm going to ask some of our panelists about this, is around how people are starting their shopping journeys now. 63% of customers visit a retail site online before they actually visit the store. And that's a massive tipping point for how consumers behave now. We're seeing other changes, and we're seeing the strengths of brands still being really important. 48% of online buyers have a strong brand preference. So when they go to buy online, they already know the brand that they're going to buy. And that's huge. It's a much bigger number than those people who are going in store. Now, I've got a stat here from China. There's been a lot of talk about live streaming, about social commerce, and about new formats to be able to build brand and have a think about how shopping is changing and how we're interacting with consumers online. What we're seeing in somewhere where like China, we know they're ahead, but live streams are bigger than linear TV now. In peak moments into the evening, we're seeing 43% of people tuning into live streams versus 38% going onto TV. And that's a massive shift. It's a massive shift in the way that people are consuming content, but a massive shift in the way that they're consuming shopping content, because it's moving just from purely transaction into entertainment and into live entertainment. And that's what people are after in advanced markets like China and also throughout Southeast Asia. And finally, where I suppose the rubber hits the road for a lot of marketers and a lot of media agencies is around that investment in search and in shopping. And what we're seeing is that of total search investment, 61% is now going into shopping formats. So it's going into lower funnel. It's supporting brands as they move into either direct-to-consumer relationships or relationships with retailers or marketplaces. And there's some of the big things that we're starting to see as we go through into online shopping areas. But it's not just been a growth of a habit. It's not just the acceleration of the habit. It's really been a change in consumer behavior. And we're definitely seeing that consumer behavior change, especially in some categories. There's more people living at home by themselves, which is driving things like delivery for convenience products. So it's not just that acceleration of habit, it's a behavior change. I'm going to start to introduce the panel now because we've seen that many businesses have heard about that dramatic wave of consumers buying online that Josh mentioned, but some have seen muted business impact. So in this panel, I'm going to invite some business leaders, but also a creative leader to investigate how brands are setting themselves up for success to capture and sustain growth in 2021. So I'd like to introduce, if I can, Victoria, Angelina, and Ruth to join me on the panel today. I'll let them do a little introduction of themselves in that order. So Victoria, Angelina, and Ruth, over to you for a moment.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Josh, for having us on this panel. My name is Victoria Nölle. I'm the head of Buyer Consumer Health for eCommerce. Super glad to be here, and I cannot stress more than enough how important this topic is, and glad to discuss with you guys.
Angelina?
I lead e-commerce for Africa for Coca-Cola. Also very happy to be here and share how important it is for the brand to be present on online platforms.
Hi, and my name is Ruth Zor. I'm here representing Wunderman Thompson and Commerce. My role is working with clients to deliver success through commerce solutions. So super excited to be joining Josh, Angelina, and Victoria in this panel today.
Thanks, Ruth, and thanks everyone for joining. I'm gonna start off with Victoria. Start where we started, and I'm gonna start with one of those tipping points that I spoke about, and that was the fact that 63% of buyers now visit online channels before physical. And I'm going to ask you quite a direct question as a global e-commerce lead. How has your approach to retail channels changed over the last 12 months?
Well, actually, I think everyone has been doing a little bit of commerce in the last years, but now the focus has really shifted, and we are massively investing time and capabilities into e-commerce. So I think before, let's say 2 years ago, e-commerce was a little bit a click to cart game. So we were very much focused towards the lower part of the funnel. And these days, I think all the leaders in the entire organization understood that e-commerce is not a click to cart game. It's basically a hybrid function which spans across the entire value chain. So if we don't get supply chain right, we cannot win in commerce. And also the collaboration among teams, among the media team, the data team, the digital marketeers has changed a lot. So breaking up the silos is the key theme of this year. And I think this is what has massively changed. It's the awareness that in commerce, we need the entire organization to win. And if we don't do, we will not get there.
Cool.
Hope this answers your question. I could go on for hours, but I think we don't have the time. So maybe
another time to go on for hours. I think we can all go on for hours about e-commerce at the moment. But I'm gonna pick up on one of the things you spoke about, Victoria, around breaking down of silos and how that works. And I'm going to ask Angelina a question around physical and online experiences, because that's been one of the biggest shifts, that we've moved from physical into online retail experiences. I think they're complementary, but they're not necessarily the same experience. Online, you can start to drive affinity with complementary products that you might not be able to do in a physical store. You can also show a really deep understanding of consumers about their desire in products. So Angelina, a question for you. How should brands think about using online to perhaps rethink the traditional shelf experience?
One of the first things is the objectives from a commercial perspective is actually quite similar for both online and offline. Where it starts diverging is where the execution starts coming in. And then you have to make sure that the brands benefit from both, that they shouldn't be mutually exclusive, they should actually be working together. So from an online perspective, one of the things that are quite different to in-store is the fact that it's virtual. So everything can happen quite quickly. You can create virtual bundles within hours. You can change pricing. You could launch a campaign in literally just a couple of hours, or even change the messaging, as well as ensure personalization. That is something different to thinking in the traditional brick and mortar store. I think it's important to always ensure that you keep the shopper at the center of all activations, and understand that online and offline, to them, are no longer separate. As you said, over 60% of shoppers have digital engagement before they purchase. So don't underestimate the points of interaction in either one of the environments and how they influence the sale in the other. And this will become more and more relevant as we see shoppers becoming more confident in online space, and actually demanding more from any platform that they're purchasing from.
Okay, so Angelina, you spoke a little bit about personalization. And is that one of the biggest benefits of more retail channels for brands and more online retail channels for brands? I suppose the promise of new personalized brand experiences like live commerce, or the ability to use data in a more meaningful way for personalization. Which one of those do you think is the most important, or in fact, are they both important?
They are both, yeah. So if we look at experiences and data, they both serve different objectives. So one drives engagement and brand love, while the other measures the success and increased effectiveness of that brand love. It's a relationship, so not an either or. What I am seeing is an ever-demanding and evolving shopper. They want more in terms of experiences. Not only that, but customer service, higher delivery times, shorter delivery times, different delivery methods, more convenience, contactless delivery, and I'm sure the list will grow in future of what the shopper actually requires. So there should be a good balance between how much experience you're giving your shopper, as well as using the data to reflect and see the efficiency of that. Because at the same time as you're trying to drive experiences and brand love, your business is also trying to improve profitability. So it's using both to find that balance.
Okay, great. I'm going to switch now maybe to a consumer perspective, and I'm going to talk to Ruth about something. one thing that I've noticed, and there was a stat that I saw the other day, and I might be making up or inflating the numbers on this one a little bit, but in the US, if you're buying shoes or buying sneakers, there's around 600 different retail platforms online that you can actually buy a pair of sneakers from. So if you're trying to buy a pair of Adidas trainers, there's a lot of choice out there. So purchase journeys are kind of becoming infinite. There's more platforms. There's more ways to buy things. There's more ways to get things delivered as well. So how do we best manage all of that? How do we best manage multiple touch points? And what are you seeing as the biggest challenges that we need to overcome there?
Yeah, I think you touch on some really interesting things there related to distribution, right? And routes to market for a lot of these consumer goods companies. And that relates to that omni-channel strategy, right? I think the whole point in being able to have more routes to market is to be able to control them for the benefit of the brand and to make sure that there's a consistent experience. And Victoria will know this well because we're doing some work with her team around that product experience management element. So making sure that the data is presented in the same way, regardless of the touch point that consumers are going to. That orchestration is dependent on content being in place, is dependent on the data being in place, and is depending on technology that helps us syndicate that content into the different outposts as required. And it requires a lot of oversight as well, and a very good understanding of what each different route to market brings to the picture and what value they add to the customer as well. And so it is a complex picture. I would say it's a picture that hasn't ever been as complex as it is today. You know, when you think about, and Josh was talking about the fundamentals of marketing, right? Your 4 P's of marketing, that product piece and that promotion piece and place, they've grown exponentially over the last 5 to 10 years. And managing that complexity requires a very good strategy, but equally very good handling of the technology, data, and content piece to be able to orchestrate it correctly and to deliver that value to the customer at the end of the experience.
Cool. Victoria, I am going to ask you a question, but I'm going to mention to everyone that if you do have questions, you can go into the comments box and ask a few questions. There's been one that's come through that I've seen from Bianca, and it's actually very close to my next question, which kind of prompted me to ask this question. So Bianca asks, with all of these new retail channels like social commerce or even just the proliferation of retail channels in general, there's really exciting opportunities, but does it just present a big challenge? So does it help you grow your business, or does it just make the task a lot harder?
I think it's an opportunity, and we take it as an opportunity, and you have to build, as Ruth also says, you have to build a strategy around this opportunity. I think it's not to jump on every train because we are not opportunistic. We know where we have to focus, and this is basically how we do. So any channel that seems to be of significance for us, there we will form and evaluate and then basically go after. I think the key opportunity we have here is with multiple channels being so super close now through digital to our consumer is actually the engagement that we have with our consumer, the direct engagement. So for example, we have some categories which are rather, let's call it shame categories, where usually people would go in the pharmacy or they would search online. But now we can really engage with the consumer. We can talk about our products. They can search for their problems online and they can find solutions. And this was not possible before. Before, the pharmacist would have probably been the only person you could have got access. And now through many, many different platforms and multiple touch points, we can be in direct interaction, and we can basically share the purpose of our brands. So I think it's an opportunity. And as Ruth said, you know, the platforms behind, the tech behind is super, super critical because basically that will enable us. And e-commerce, I think, is a game of fewer people with the right technology and the right partners at hand. And through this, you can basically then handle multiple platforms.
Cool. That was a good answer. I'm going to follow up with another question because I can see that you want to talk more about this. I want to ask you, so you mentioned about the experience that you can have with your customers on other retail platforms, but you're handing over that relationship with your customers to a retail platform. How do you kind of reconcile that as a brand marketer when the customer, yes, you're having an interaction with them, but you're not necessarily owning the platform that they're on?
I think it depends, and it depends on the platform. Even within Amazon, for example, there is 1P, there is 3P, then you have the retailer, and then you might even play in direct to consumer, where we as a brand can completely own the entire experience. So I think we carefully have to build every experience depending on the platform. And I don't feel actually we're giving away anything when we cooperate with partners. So customers are partners for us. And through these partners, we can also build the relationship to our consumers. And we see specifically, I actually had a very nice discussion yesterday on the topic of ecosystems. And we see that specifically in APAC or China, platforms are much more advanced, and that data sharing is on a daily basis. I mean, real-time data sharing from both sides. I know that EMEA is a bit more restrictive on that, and also not that advanced. But I think it's all about partnering with the right retailers, with the right platforms. And then it's not such a big question around who owns what. It's more a win-win situation for both parties.
Yeah. And Josh, if I may add to what Victoria shared with us, I think what becomes absolutely key is that trading and merchandising function within the company, right? These people have decades of experience managing relationships, albeit with more bricks and mortar types of partnerships. But you said it yourself, right? The world of retail is moving online as well, and COVID has only accelerated that. A lot of those best practice principles that those trading and merchandising teams have developed through those more bricks and mortar offline experiences are very easily transferable to the online world, because at the end of the day, it is about doing good for the business, and it's about entering a partnership where both sides of the equation win. So we place a lot of emphasis on leveraging that intelligence that companies like Bayer, like Coca-Cola have developed throughout years of orchestrating those relationships. And we have ways in which we work with them to ensure that the operating models are in place to reap the benefits from that intelligence into the online world. So let's not forget about those quote unquote old functions that are still able to deliver a ton of value for companies as well.
Yeah, and maybe one last point on that, just we really have to think like channel agnostic, because from a consumer perspective, they don't think, oh, I go in this channel or that channel today. They are more convenience driven. Whatever is nearest or best to them, they will just hop on. And this is also the perspective we as a company need to think. It's not e-commerce, it's not omni, it's commerce. And if we can serve the same experience across our channels, then we've done a good job.
Cool. I'm going to jump to another point. There's a couple of questions coming through around data, around pain points around data, around the cookieless future and first party. And my question for Ruth, as we go through, I've got a couple of questions for Ruth, but before we end up, because I'm interested on this data, but also the experience angle from an agency perspective. Do you think so we spoke about in the presentation, 25% of all online retail sales are going to go into commerce or e-commerce. Do you think that brands in the long term will see a shift to more direct consumer relationships because they want to own data? And do you see that as a real driver for all categories, some categories, or how do you think that might work and wash up in the future?
Yeah, listen, I'm going to challenge the direct-to-consumer definition here, because I think it's been used predominantly in the last 3 years in a very narrow way, right? Everything you do that touches a consumer is direct-to-consumer, whether that is on marketplaces, whether that's on retailers, whether that's on social commerce or on your owned and operated properties. It is direct-to-consumer by definition. And I think the big mistake has been from companies that approach direct-to-consumer with blinkers in silo to every other route to market that they have at their disposal. Now, Working in media, Josh, you will know it better than anyone else, the phenomenon of the walled garden, where data is amassed in these specific ecosystems, you know, Google, Facebook, Amazon, without any sort of throughput, creates some challenges, right? Because that consumer journey is fragmented into those different touch points. But there are ways in which you can understand what those patterns are about, and to glean intelligence about how to define your proposition, how to adjust your proposition from those patterns, right? And you will have seen the release we made a couple of weeks ago on Resolve, which is one of the newer data tools that the Wunderman Thompson family has brought out to market. It is about understanding the consumer. It's about identifying those patterns and then using that intelligence to be smarter about those marketing efforts, to develop test and learn strategies that help us port over some of those learnings, whether that data is present or not, into the different touch points. So for us, it's incredibly important to have, yes, the strategy, as I talked at the beginning, but equally a test and learn methodology that allows you to validate or disprove some of those hypotheses, because you have these ecosystems that will not connect to each other. And I think that's where the magic in doing commerce well comes in, and where that orchestration piece that I talked about earlier becomes a very interesting challenge for people like me, Angelina, you know, Victoria, who are working in the thick of it with customers. Because if it were easy, let's face it, everyone would do it, and they would do it very, very well. But the reality is, it's a bit of science and art coming together to be able to do it correctly.
Cool. There is a whole heap of questions coming in. I'm conscious of time, so I'm probably gonna make a statement and then ask a question, because I haven't had enough airtime today in terms of my opinion. I think there's a real challenge around creativity as well. We spoke a lot about data, and there's a lot of data questions coming in. For me, from a consumer experience, one of my big frustrations is that, and as a person that helps brands on e-commerce, is that whether you're selling a luxury watch or a bottle of shampoo, the experience is pretty similar, especially as you get onto a marketplace or a retailer environment. So my big challenge to a lot of brands is, how can we make experiences better? And that's why I get really excited about things like live commerce. Although they haven't reached scale everywhere, for me, that's a really good solve around that. But we've been talking and kind of swirling around a few different topics here. So I'm going to finish off as we get to time with a question, a really quick question around how we set up as organizations, and are we set for the big change that's happened? Josh said, and I kind of said as well, there's been 10 years of progress in 10 months. And have we been able to adapt? Have brands, agencies adopted those models that are fitter, flatter, but also faster for decision making? So a question for Ruth and Victoria to kind of finish off there really quick. Do you think we've got it right? How are organizations working, and what can we do about it in the future?
I think, yes, organizations definitely have to evolve much faster these days. And per se, coming from a big organization, it always takes a little bit more time than agencies. So we see agencies rapidly change. They are more super agile. And then I feel that having the right partners and being also challenged from the partners in order to move forward, I think this really helps in the journey. And also getting a lot of fresh inspiration is super critical. But I can say from my side, being part of a bigger organization, we are super agile and fast, or we became super agile and fast in the last 2 years. And it's amazing to see how everything has changed, and with us, the entire environment and partners we're working with.
And I guess from my side, Josh, I would say there's been incredible acceleration, right? And I think if there's any silver lining from the year that we've had in 2020, is exactly that. It's forced us to drop the barriers, to really think as an entity, as a squad, as a unit, be multidisciplinary. And we're seeing that big change in clients. It is also true, you know, that some organizations may want even greater speed to market. So we are working on propositions with some organizations where we help them do that incubation, right? And the reason we do that is because we have to face it. There direct-to-consumer brands that are going out into the marketing, challenging the most established companies with their offerings. And they are funded in a completely different way, right? They're coming in with growth investors who are not really interested in profitability. They're just looking for that hockey stick curve in terms of growth. And that is a very different scenario to what most of the companies that we get to work with at WPP actually is, where they have to respond to shareholders, where there are certain targets and markers that they have to hit. And so the level of agility can vary from company to company. And where we are a great partner to them is where we can inject that speed when they need it, and where we can help them get propositions out to market as quickly as possible. And frankly, that's what really makes me very excited about the role I do today.
Cool. Well, thank you. I'm going to wrap up the panel. It's been really good. There's been a lot of really good comments. A lot of people agreeing, especially with Victoria. So you've done a good job in answering those questions. And
glad to hear.
and perhaps you'll get a few more on LinkedIn now. But thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you, Angelina. Thank you, Victoria, and thank you, Ruth, for what I think was a really good panel. What I'm going to do now is hand back to Josh, and Josh is going to take some time with one of our partners and arguably one of the biggest shops in the world to talk to Google about how we're working together.
Thank you very much, Josh, and what a great panel that was. Right, so e-commerce is not just a shift in consumer behavior. As businesses change shape, their media spend is following. For this reason, we're working closer than ever with our partners to ensure that we're not only building foundational commerce excellence, but accelerating to commerce maturity. And in the last 2 months, over 300 media commerce have completed a 10-module bootcamp with Amazon, and 100 of those are now certified in Amazon's suite of tools. Now, many of the headlines in e-commerce skew towards the big marketplaces like Amazon, or retailers like our wonderful clients Tesco or Walgreens Boots. But brands are also starting to take direct-to-consumer channels very seriously as a part of their business transformation narrative. In 2020, 74% of shoppers were reported to have used a Google product in the previous week to help with their shopping. So shopping ads are becoming a mandatory investment for businesses selling online, but also they're being seriously considered for any businesses selling physical goods offline as well. And retailers spent 61% of their Google paid search investment on shopping ads last year. So where do media agencies fit in? So as brands become more mature, media agency expertise becomes key, and I'll explain. As competition amongst brands intensifies, channel innovation becomes imperative. As more channels get added, platform execution and best practice is critical. And as penetration increases, the importance of technology and operations rises. So I'm now going to do an interview with Akhil Padman from Google. And we're going to talk about how media agencies are working with partners to become deeper consultants for brands. So welcome, Akhil.
Hi, Josh. Thank you.
How are you doing?
Thank you for having me here. I'm well, thank you.
Good, good. Well, look, let's jump straight into it.
Sure.
I first want to talk about maturity models. So we talk a lot about maturity models, but they can seem quite daunting for brands as they prove value in moving up the chain. So how would you advise brands on setting up the right KPIs to measure maturity impact?
Thanks, Josh. As our esteemed guests mentioned in the last panel as well, we can sit here and talk about commerce for hours and hours, but let me try and give you a bigger picture. I think, and obviously everyone loves a good stat, so let me start with this stat. In 2020, e-commerce channel sales alone grew by 32%. That's massive, like in terms of a year-on-year growth. And that really has been the one that has underlined this need for transformation, which has been one of the biggest triggers for any kind of consulting service needs or technical delivery needs that clients have got to partners like yourselves or to platforms like us. So maturity by the nature of the term itself, is all about the journey, right? It's about providing a structure to that transformation journey by breaking it down into like smaller goals and milestones. A very big part of this maturity model or maturity conversation really are the maturity principles in the way we look at it. And there are 5 A's that go into the maturity models that we have developed on the commerce end, which is very similar to the data and tech maturity framework that we also work with a lot of your clients on globally. There's the audience lens, automation, attribution, ads, creatives, and access. This is where I feel that the best starting point needs to be an alignment in terms of what are those principles that are most important to you and your clients, which are really those signals of nothing but CBOs, right? Your client's business objectives, really, and these need to be sort of the classic signals of the CBOs. Based on those principles, we can then actually map out the stages of maturity and what we call as the maturity pathway to the transformation conversation overall. So that's how we look at the whole process of maturity and setting of KPIs per se. Finally, the last thing I want to add here is I think while we start thinking about where we want to be, it is equally or more important to understand where we are, and which is why we always encourage and urge our partners like yourselves, your teams, to really spend this time in really understanding where we are today and assessing and auditing that whole process. And really, to be honest, even through that whole journey, there are so many other extraneous variables, so many other dependencies, which is where we really look at agency partners who have that holistic view to the client's media, the client's marketing, the client's business overall, to help us be the enablers of this journey, because there are so many other risk factors involved and extraneous variables that could just have a bearing on the overall maturity pathway, right? So basically, that's how we look at the sort of the KPI part of it.
Okay, and so let's move into sort of the power of scale. So whilst most e-commerce operations are market specific, many global brands need to put in, like the brands we've just been talking to on the panel just before, need to put in place maturity agendas across markets to make the effort worth it. How important is it to work with partners like us, but others too, that have the scale of thinking across globally important markets?
Absolutely. Go-to-market is one of the big areas of the maturity journey overall. This goes back to thinking about the principles, as I was talking about in the previous sort of response to your first question, right? One of the ways we recommend our partners like yourselves to think about it is really looking at the client category lens. And all of this, Josh, is about proof of concept at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. The more we're able to generate proof of concept at scale across categories, and typically at Google and our relationship from a JBP standpoint, we look at categories like DTC, brands, retail, CPG as being the real sort of torchbearers, if you'd like, on this conversation. So really what we're looking at is working with you to generate these proof of concepts, right? Okay. That can set the pathway to scale. And to be honest, enabling scale and delivering scale, we are equipped at both to help you, bring to your partners as well.
Okay, well, we've talked about platform scale, but what about the scale of audiences? So clearly Google, as you say, is a scale platform, but increasingly so are your competitors. So to Ruth's point earlier, do you think we'll see brands shift to more D2C relationships where brands own the channels and data themselves?
We are already seeing this accelerating in 2020. I mean, again, just to throw a stat there, 35% of US consumers shopped online at a store they hadn't before in Jan 21. So that's like a massive indicator. And this is my favorite one. 43% of retailers are offering buy online, pick in store or curb pickup options, as against 6.9% in December 2019. That's a 7-fold jump. in really wanting to own that journey with consumer, right? And getting as closer to the consumer as possible. So I would not say like DTC in the truest sense, but really close to DTC. Now, which is why we've been very, very you've been wanting to bring this maturity journey or this maturity framework along with you in collaboration with you to your clients as soon as possible, because we've already started seeing the trends in here. And just to sort of round up on that, I think Google's proposition and Google's shopping strategy in the space is really built on three things, right? The full funnel experiences that we are offering, the new formats, insights, and optimization levers that we are providing for you and your clients, and just the ability to meet the consumer moments through machine learning and the power of machine learning behind our products. And that's really on the principles on which, or the pillars on which our strategy is built.
No, I have to say, I mean, you are, I'm not just saying this because you're in front of me, but Google is a great partner of ours in that way. I think the way that we work together is very iterative, and it's not just like we don't just have like JBPs that we just sort of write up and then leave and then come back to a year later. It's a very iterative process, and I think that's I think that's fantastic, really. And that sort of leads me to probably my final question, because we are running out of time.
Sure.
A bugbear of mine, and this isn't a new thing actually. This has been going on for quite a few years now. Is clients of ours, brands, will spend millions of dollars on consulting and technology, only for it to come to nothing when you go to execute. Because a lot of the time, they'll have a deal where they'll do a deal with a big technology or platform company, but there's no investment in actually helping execute on that platform. So how important is it that the frameworks that you use to set up for success can be implemented in the modern marketplace?
Absolutely. I mean, we spoke about the need for execution. We spoke about the transformation journey and the pressure on the transformation journey, just given the size of the e-commerce channel or just the direct to consumer channel. That's only going to increase by the years. I think the key word here, modern marketplace, is great, but I would also like to add complex. So it's a modern and complex marketplace, and really, like, digital media is evolving at a rapid pace. The ecosystem is evolving. I mean, we're talking about things like GDPR, consent management, privacy. There were so many questions around, data and the use of data, or the inability to use data, et cetera, et cetera. These define what is that modern and complex marketplace to a really great extent. And given this reality, the idiom "proof is in the pudding" has never been more important, to be very honest with you. And I think, going back to my first response, the way we are looking at the maturity framework, the way we are looking at setting those maturity principles and setting those smaller milestones and goals, actually is a very effective model for testing and iterating these different strategies in this modern and complex marketplace. It is actually built out of the sort of evolving marketplace around us, which includes changing consumer trends, just like regulatory trends and policies, partner behaviors, brand behaviors, and so on and so forth. So it is really built for exactly that, the modern and the complex marketplace.
Thank you, Akhil. That was brilliant, and that was, that was a great place to leave the conversation. We're coming to time. I hope everybody enjoyed this last 45 minutes. I always think that if you can just take one nugget from 45-minute session like this, then it's been worth doing. I've taken out loads. I've got probably my top three would be: Ruth talked about how operating at the same pace as consumers and in alignment with customer expectation will have the biggest impact on growth. I think is exactly right. And the idea of being channel agnostic came across from all three of the panelists, and I think that's absolutely right. I think with the evolution of platforms, Angelina talked about thinking beyond just optimizing the digital shelf and more about how experiences impact how consumers choose brands. In other words, we need to think more end to end, and I think that sort of came through from you as well, Akhil. And Victoria talked about channel agnostic and breaking up the silos. And look, scale is really important, clearly, as we've just talked about. But to be successful in e-commerce, specialisms really need to join forces. In other words, we need to work in partnership across media, marketing, merchandising, and our partners as well. So with that, I'm going to bid you all farewell. I hope you enjoyed the last 45 minutes. Hope to see you all again soon for our next session, but also really hope to see you all in real life very soon. Thank you very much. Cheers.